So welcome to the Pass It On Network's monthly 50 by 50 conversation series. I think most of you around the screen know you, but I know there are some people who don't. My name is Moira Allen, and I'm co-founder of this network with Dr. Jan Hively, who should be here any second now. And because there's so many newcomers, I just want to say a few words about our Pass It On network. First of all, it's a global network of positive aging pioneers, and we use the word pioneers, starting from Pass It On Network. And we are pioneers advocating for older people's rights and contributing to the adaptation of our society to the challenges of longevity, because this longevity is really disturbing everything and turning it upside down. 223 is our 10th anniversary, and we've been celebrating it with pioneers in 65 countries around the world, all confronting the challenges of demographic changes. We publish our Pioneer Gazette and run our 50/50 series monthly. We attend meetings and seminars in Europe, in Africa, and participate in the United Nations Open-Ended Working Group on Aging, advocating for a convention on the rights of older people. And that leads me to today's subject. When Osnat and I, with Margaret Young and several other of our pioneer members, met in New York earlier this year, we actually met in the real life a much respected and admired guest in flesh. And I'm going to pass over to Osnat right now to introduce our guest speaker.
It's always so good to meet people in the flesh. But you know, here we can actually meet everybody virtually and enjoy it. So I want to introduce our topic today. You might have seen it in the invitation. There was a question there. What goes through your mind when you hear these two words, age discrimination? I know what goes in my mind, but our guest today is going to talk more about it. Her name is Bridget Sleap, which is the Human Rights Watch. Bridget, maybe you can wave your hand so you say, oh yeah, there's Bridget. And she's a senior researcher on the rights of older persons. Her research topics span from advocacy and policy on the rights of older people at the UN and international level, including ageism and age discrimination, autonomy and independence. And she's based now in the UK, but she's not just learning everything from the safety of her office. She also lived and worked in Mozambique, Egypt, and Jordan. And so, Bridget, what goes through your mind when you hear these two words, age discrimination?
Well, okay. I mean, lots and lots of different things, certainly. But just to start, I wanted to thank you, Osnat and Moira, for your introduction and for inviting me here today. I was really pleased to accept the invitation because I have to say, really for selfish reasons, because I wanted to hear what you had to say about age discrimination, and I wanted to learn from you. I'm about to developing a new project at Human Rights Watch on age discrimination, and the best way to think about it in these early stages is to talk to people and to learn from people's experiences. So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Shall I go straight onto the slides and to my presentation? Osnat, is that where we
go right ahead?
Okay, good. All right, well, I'll just share my screen. So just pull that up now. There we go. So what I want to talk about is, and I won't talk for too long because we have some really interesting questions to discuss at the end, but is to just give a very quick overview about age discrimination, what it is, how it's sort of addressed under the law, and some of the what I believe are problems with the law at the moment, and then that will take us into our discussion. Okay. And I think no discussion around age discrimination can take place without first of all, considering ageism, and I'm sure this is very familiar to you, this definition of ageism, that it's the negative stereotypes, prejudice, and behavior towards older people and older age, including our own. And that last bit is really important, our sort of self-internalized ageism about our own older age, and ourselves as older people. When ageism, the term, was first coined, it did refer to older people, attitudes towards older people. I know nowadays it can also be used around attitudes towards younger people as well. But when I'm using it in the context of older people. Okay. Another thing that we need to think about when we're talking about age discrimination are age categories, which are used by society, are used in laws, policy, and practice as a way to attribute rights, rewards, responsibilities, and characteristics. So, for example, under the law, there is an age where we're able to vote, where we're able to get married, where we're allowed to, or where we join the military, whether voluntary or under conscription, or when we can drink alcohol, all of these things, when we're allowed to buy cigarettes. I mean, absolutely so many things in our lives are sort of determined by age categories. So it's very, very common to use age. When we're thinking about discrimination, we have to think about differential treatment. And so that is treating people differently on the basis of their older age. And one of the issues around differential treatment and using these age categories is that we are incredibly diverse when we are older. We have sort of throughout our lives, we have developed, and when we arrive in older age, we're a very incredibly diverse group of people. And this can be to do with our life experience, maybe our health, our economic status. So we're very, very varied. And so to treat people based on a chronological age when people are so diverse sometimes doesn't make sense. It's very difficult to compare individuals just because they share the same age. Sometimes this differential treatment, treating people differently on the basis of their age, is for ostensibly positive reasons, to try and achieve equality. So, for example, older people may be entitled to discounts or subsidies on the basis of their older age, a discount on transport, a discount on medication, or on access to leisure or cultural facilities. We may get entitlements when we reach a certain age, a discount or an allowance to pay for fuel and energy in the winter. There may be separate queues in hospitals, or there may be designated seats on public transport. And so these are measures that are put in place to try and ensure that older people have equal access to participate in society. Interestingly, when I talk to people about their rights, and I talk to older people and I ask them, well, what are your rights? What do you think your rights are? Very often, oops, sorry, I did that too soon. Very often people list these types of positive measures as their rights. They believe that these are rights, when in fact, often these types of positive measures are really no more than sticking plasters or band-aids. They're addressing the symptoms of a deeper underlying problem. For example, inadequate pensions, or lack of support. And so although this is differential treatment in older age and it's aimed to achieve equality, very often these measures really don't address the underlying problems. Differential treatment can also be used, have a negative impact. And this is where discrimination comes in. And so if people are treated differently on the basis of their age, and that results in a denial of human rights, then this is discrimination. So on the one hand, we might have positive measures to try to aim for equality. And then on the other hand, we have being treated differently because of our age that in fact denies us our rights. And here is just a definition from the Human Rights Committee, which is a UN body, and just describes discrimination from a human rights point of view. Okay. So here are some examples of differential treatment when it can be discrimination. So it can result in the denying of our rights, and they'll be familiar to you, I'm sure. So mandatory retirement ages, when we're forced to stop working because of our age. Unfavorable working conditions. For example, maybe you're not forced to stop working, but you might have to take a job on a lower pay, or you might have your responsibilities reduced when you reach a certain age and you want to continue working. We see age limits in recruitment. I seem to be reading a lot of articles about China recently, and 35 seems to be an age that is very problematic, because at 35, the Chinese civil service stops. That's the limit for recruitment. So you can't apply for a job in the civil service after the age of 35. And so this also is reflected in the private sector. So really quite low, quite young, but still that's age discrimination on the basis of older age. We also see age limits in vocational training to ensure you have the skills so you can continue working. And in some places, older workers are preferred for redundancy, so they're likely to be made redundant first. So different types of discrimination in employment. But it's not only in employment. We can be discriminated against on the basis for older age in access to different goods and services. There may be upper age limits in some health care, some treatments, some cancer screening may have an upper age limit after which you don't automatically get referred for an appointment. Access to financial goods and services, to travel insurance is the one that we sort of think of first, but there are others as well. Access to mortgages, maybe access to loans for other reasons. And as I said, travel insurance is one type of insurance, but also medical insurance. In the Philippines, when you reach a certain age, you can no longer get medical insurance, and you would have to put yourself onto your children's medical insurance, which is just, yeah. I mean, it's very very demeaning, I think, when you reach a certain age and you can't have your own insurance and you have to get yourself put onto your children's policy. And then also discrimination, age limits and access to education in the types of courses you might be able to do, or whether you're eligible for a loan to do an educational course. So there are a number of different ways in which we can be discriminated against on the basis of our age. The question then is, well, this is all happening, this discrimination is taking place, so what does the law have to say about it, and how is age discrimination prohibited in the law? Well, at the international level, at the UN, Moira mentioned right at the beginning that we met at the Open-Ended Working Group on Aging, where the discussion is around a new convention on the rights of older people. And one of the reasons why so many people are calling for this convention is because within international human rights law at the moment, age as a ground for discrimination is only prohibited in one, or explicitly prohibited in one international human rights treaty, and that's the Treaty on the Rights of Migrant Workers. In all of the other human rights treaties, age isn't mentioned as a specific ground for discrimination. And so it falls under a general category of other status. And so, yes, age discrimination is prohibited under international law, but it's virtually invisible because it's not named, it's not specifically named, and therefore less attention is paid to it when the UN monitors the implementation of rights by different countries. There's very little consideration of age discrimination. At the regional level, there are also regional human rights systems, and the protection against age discrimination is very inconsistent. So in Asia, well, there is no human rights regional framework, and so there is no prohibition of age discrimination across the region in Asia at all. In Africa, there is an African human rights system. There is the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. And there is an optional, well, there is a protocol, an additional document about older people's rights that has been adopted by the African Union, which includes the prohibition of age discrimination. It hasn't yet come into force because not enough countries have ratified it yet. But if it does come into force, enough countries ratify it, then that will provide a prohibition of age discrimination. At the inter-American level, the Organization of American States is the regional human rights framework, and there is a convention on the rights of older people in the inter-American region, which has been adopted, it has been ratified by enough states, it has come into force, and it has a strong prohibition of age discrimination. And at the European level, it's a really mixed bag. So the European Convention of Human Rights and Fundamental Freedoms does not explicitly mention age in its age discrimination article. Neither does the European Social Charter, but the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union does explicitly mention age as a prohibited ground for discrimination. So it's a really mixed bag in Europe. So regionally, it's very inconsistent. And then when we look at the law at the national level, there is a real patchwork. So age discrimination can be prohibited sometimes in national constitutions. Sometimes age is mentioned if there is a non-discrimination article. The same too in equality legislation. Sometimes age is listed as a prohibited ground for discrimination. Sometimes it's not. Some countries have comprehensive anti-discrimination laws that will include age discrimination, others don't. Some have specific legislation on age discrimination that is perhaps limited to one area of life, most usually employment, less often access to goods and services, but some countries have nothing at all. So it's completely, it's fragmented, it's inconsistent, and age discrimination really is treated less seriously than other forms of discrimination under the law. However, if that inconsistent patchwork of sometimes invisible protection wasn't bad enough, when there is protection against age discrimination under the law, this is accompanied by exceptions. So written into the law are exceptions where discrimination that denies people their rights is deemed lawful, it is justified. And age discrimination can be justified if it has a legitimate aim. And so if an employer, for example, can argue that saving the company money or being able to promote younger people is a legitimate business aim, then that's one way, the first part of justifying age discrimination. And it also has to be necessary. So this differential treatment of people because of their age has to be necessary to achieve that aim. There can't be another way that you could achieve the same legitimate aim. And it has to be proportionate. So it's like you can't use a sledgehammer to crack a nut. So your discrimination against older people, if there is a way that you could do the same thing that is not so harmful, that doesn't deny people their rights, then you should do that other thing. This has to be proportionate to your aim.
Right.
And so these exceptions allow for age discrimination under the law. If there's a legitimate aim, if it's necessary, and if it's proportionate, you can justify it and be allowed to discriminate against older people on the basis of their age. And we're going to finish with a little poll that Osnat has done for us, where we're going to see, I'm going to give you just 2 examples of cases which one has gone to a court and the other went to an equality body, where an older person was claiming that they were the subject of age discrimination. And we're going to ask you whether you think that this particular case was going to be justified, was going to be allowed by the court, or whether the court said, no, this is not allowed, this is not possible. So maybe, Osnat, we can do the poll now. Yeah.
Okay.
So the first case, the first case was from Germany, and the case was brought by a dentist who was facing mandatory retirement, because in Germany, or forced retirement, in Germany, dentists have to retire at the age of 68. And this dentist who took the case, they said that this was age discrimination, and it denied them their right to work. And the case went as far as the Court of Justice of the European Union. So it went through the German courts and then went up to the Court of Justice. And so the question is, do you think that the court said, yes, this is, did the court say, yes, this is justifiable, yes, this is allowed to happen because it is legitimate, has a legitimate aim, it's necessary, and it's proportionate? Or did the court say, no, this is not allowed to happen, this is discrimination? So 74% of you said you thought that the court would say, yes, this is justified, it is allowed to happen, and 26% no, the court said this is age discrimination. Well, sadly, the 74% of you were right. The court said, yes, it is justifiable to force dentists to retire at the age of 68. And the reason that they gave was that dentist skills decline with age. So all dentist skills decline with age, and therefore forcing them to retire is in the interests of patient safety, because their skills decline with age. Which to me absolutely illustrates the problem of these exceptions, of these justifications, because to me that is based on an ageist stereotype and a negative ageist stereotype about people's skills, and when in fact, as I was talking about earlier, everyone is different. And to use an arbitrary age like 68 to say someone has skills and someone doesn't, to me is an ageist stereotype. Shall we do the next one? Okay, so with this one is around access to healthcare and access to goods and services. And so within Israel, under the law, there were different age limits to when you were able to be on the list for a organ transplant, and there were different ages for different types for kidneys and heart and things. So I just picked the one for a liver transplant, and the law said that you can only be on the list to receive a liver transplant up until the age of 67. After that, you're not allowed to be on the list. And so the Ministry of Health, in this case, appointed a committee, a committee of ethics, to come to a conclusion whether this was ethical or whether it was discriminatory, whether it discriminated on the basis of age. And so again, in this question, yes, do you think that the committee decided that, yes, this was justified? Like saying before, is this allowed? Is this legitimate? Is this necessary and proportionate in terms of the distribution of kind of scarce, limited resources? Or did the committee say, no, this should not be allowed, this is age discrimination?
Yes.
50-50. Very interesting. Okay. So in fact, with this one, the committee, the Ministry of Health's appointed committee, they decided that no, this was not justified. This should not be an exception, that yes, this is age discrimination and it should not be allowed. And the reason that they gave was that these decisions should be made on an individual basis and not on a chronological age. You should make these decisions about the individuals, an individual clinical assessment of the person. And then they also said that if you use a chronological age, you are you're biased towards people that you would assume to have a longer life expectancy. And so you would favor younger people, really. So if you're not basing it on the individual, if you're just basing it on an age, then you will automatically, or you're likely to favor someone who is younger. And this then puts a greater value on the life of a younger person. And this is unethical, to put more value on one person's life than another because of their age. And so the committee said, no, this is not justified. And the law changed, and they were removed. They removed these upper age limits. Okay, so this last third one is from Belgium. And a case was taken to the Belgian equality body that looks at claims for discrimination by someone who was unable to rent a car over the age of 65. Okay, so again, did the equality body, did they decide that yes, this is justifiable, this different treatment is justified, it's necessary, or did the equality body say no, this is not justified, this is age discrimination and should not be allowed? Okay. Yeah, well, you got it right. The 78% of you. Yes, the equality body said no, this is not justified. And what happened here was the rental company was using the age of 65 because they said that people over the age of 65 are more likely to have accidents, and their legitimate aim was to keep they wanted to keep their costs down, the insurance payments that they'd have to pay out. But in fact, the latest data research showed that people within the 51 to 75-year-old age bracket had the lowest sort of frequency of accidents and of damage. And therefore, the data, the basis for the rental company was inaccurate. It was wrong, and so the rental company removed its upper age cap because it was based on a stereotype that the data didn't back up. Yeah. So those three cases, I just wanted to share with you because it just shows you the way that these exceptions can be used. Sometimes, hopefully, they're recognized for being ageist, and they are sort of the practice is stopped, but sometimes it continues, like the German dentists being forced to retire at the age of 68 on a basis of a stereotype about people's skills declining as they get older, rather than sort of an individual approach to that. So I'll stop there. Thank you very much. I will stop sharing my screen now and look forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you, Bridget. This was, we know so much, we hear so much about age discrimination. We think we know so much about age discrimination, and we're going to have an opportunity to share about this in a minute. What struck me is that it's two things that you said, that age discrimination is treated less seriously by the law, and there's not so much protection, if any, across the world in whatever context we are. And one of the questions that I would like to pose to everybody, and please use your digital hand if you want to speak, it's in the reaction button at the bottom of the Zoom screen. The question is, while it looks random that all these legal proceedings are brought to the court, there it seems that something triggers age discrimination. And the question is, what are the factors that tend to trigger age discrimination? And you can look at, I encourage you to answer it from your own context, from your own environment, from the things that you know, rather than a very general statement about the state of the world. And then we'll have a more intimate understanding of where you are and how you see things. So the question is, what are the factors that tend to trigger age discrimination?
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes. So I think that the world in general is not ready for that longevity, that people are living longer. And now something humorous, I feel age discrimination when I sit on the train and the inspector comes and checks the tickets and he just skips me, he doesn't ask me to show him that, I am entitled to go free of charge. And I feel sad that, immediately he considers me as an old person. So it is just a joke, but it is true. And what is my experience going back to that very interesting lecture? For example, in my own country, the Czech Republic, we are just suffering from a lack of doctors. So it is so individual, and probably a situation is different in every country, because in my country, the doctors are working as long as they can, because we don't have enough dentists, we don't have enough pediatricians, we don't have enough general practitioners. So they are really working maybe till 80 until they are able to. So nobody kicks them out because we suffer from a lack of doctors in some regions. So it is one thing. And the last thing that I would like to mention, to give the floor to the others, is that I think that in general, society is not realizing that the people who are retired are really having a big potential, because they are not losing it with their retirement, and they could be very useful. And if they are not from any reason to continue with their profession, they could go for requalification and somehow help in that field of care of the very old people, because there will be not enough carers in the future. And I think that those capable, quite young retirees would be able to do it. just because they are having some values that the youngsters or younger people can't get anywhere. They can't buy it in the pharmacy, like it is the wisdom, and it is that compassion, and it is everything that you just learned during your life, the life experiences. So they would be absolutely ideal in that field. And I think that it is something that the governments are still not understanding this. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Dana. Verna, and then Sheila after.
Yes, I just attended the Stanford University Summit on Longevity, and it is virtual, it is recorded, it's online if you'd like to look at it. But one of the powerful questions they asked, both parents and teachers, were, you are raising now centenarians. How are you going to teach them differently? What are the messages you are going to give them? And it just blew me away, because these children are going to live to 100 and more. We know that for a fact, you know, unless they get hit by a bus or something. But it just was very powerful. I mean, we have to begin educating in a very different way. Thank you.
Sheila, you can get yourself off mute, please.
Yes. I don't know, you probably can't see this, but every year we do a film festival on aging. And it used to be in a theater, and now we do it virtually. Anyway, we always have a brochure, and tells all the films that are in there. Well, the first year, which was 2011, we asked a publicist to come and look at our materials, see if everything looked good. Well, she looked at one of these, and where it said aging, Legacy Film Festival on Aging, she pointed, she said, take that word off there. And I started laughing, because I said, that is the point. That's why we call it the Legacy Film Festival on Aging. And some people are still very disturbed by that word. One other thing I want to say quickly, when I was in, let's say, I think I was around 42, I wanted to apply for a job with the city. At the time I was living in Chicago. And it said anybody over the age of 40 was not qualified. That's how low it went in those days for certain jobs. If you were over 40, you were out. You could not apply for a job.
And if you're in China, it's still the same, 35. Yeah, thank you, Sheila. Christine, what's happening in South Africa?
Evening, everybody. Lovely to see each one of you. It's a pleasure to be here. I currently work every day with the aged, and what I have noticed is that each individual, you need to actually judge on an individual basis, because the people that I find that get themselves involved in doing things, they seem to age better. But in a lot of the old age homes that I work in, which are the government old age homes, there are no activities for them to be able to grow. So what we find is that they're going more and more backwards, instead of actually embracing their aging and continuing their learning. So this is a challenge that I see on a daily basis working with the aged, and it's just a thought I put out there, you know, because each case you need to basically evaluate on different levels, because it all depends on how that particular elderly person has matured and grown within their own lives. So each case has an individual merit. I just thought I'd share that.
Thank you, Christine. Valerie.
Hi. I saw a thing, it was in Kenya, I think, where the Port Authority knocked the age limit off at 32. 32 is you cannot work at the Port Authority in I think it was Kenya, it might have been Nigeria, but the point is that we have skills and knowledge that we can pass on and share, and that's where we should be looking at, showing people what value we can add rather than just looking old.
Interesting. No, Lyle, and then I'm going to pose another question here. Go ahead, Lyle.
Thank you. I just want to take it in a different direction, going back to the original question on the invitation about what goes through our minds when we hear the words age discrimination. And I was struck by Bridget's opening comment about ageism being negative, creating negative stereotypes in people's minds, including our own. And while it's important to look at the legal aspects, I think that the biggest voice that I hear in my head is my own negative voice if I don't watch out. So I think, to balance the whole thing in terms of looking at people's chronological age and their physical age and perhaps their attitudinal age, it is important to balance these two things and give them 50-50. The legal side, visible or invisible, but the other side, that voice in our head. And I'm just in the throes of starting something called silver verve, which many of you would qualify for, the silver being the color of my hair, if I have much, and the verve being to remind us to be better at being, at moving, dancing, living, and all those things. But getting away from the worst of the longevity practitioners, like the American Brian Johnson, the tycoon, who spends all his day taking various potions, and apparently his left eye is 35 years old, his right eye is 50 years old, his cardiovascular system is 75 years old, and he's doing things to his penis right now. We need to move away from the extreme kind of eking out the chronological age and work more on the attitudinal age, and that's handling the voice in our heads.
Powerful statement, Lyle. It means that we have internal and external triggers to what triggers ageism and how we can manage it, how we can navigate it. And we had some examples from Bridget about circumstances where age should be considered relevant in policy making or in any other context of your life. So what, in your mind, in your experience, what are these circumstances or situations that age should be considered relevant in decision making, in policy making? And I would like to leave the workplace out of this, because the workplace is almost very well addressed in most countries, in most situations, one way or another. So here's the question: in what situations or circumstances age can be considered relevant?
So one thing that I was thinking about in relationship to this and the question before is that in 2020, the American Psychological Association created new guidelines, first recognizing that ageism is a factor faced by older persons, So that, and I was looking for some of the positive things rather than just all the negative. And that's an important step that's been taken. And that coincides with a reframing of ageist systems. I know that in Chicago, there has been an effort, I'm trying to remember exactly what it is, but for the continuing education certification program at Rush University in Chicago, for instance, they offer a foundational competency training in adult mental health, which helps to discriminate between issues that are age-related and other challenges. So mental health is an area where it's important to understand that some issues are age-related and some are not. I mean, there are definite things that happen, not universally, but there are certainly issues that are age-related. Loneliness has been shown, for instance. We all know that the statistics are on that for older persons. And so there are real issues that we can't ignore as part of aging.
Thank you, Bruce. Clearly, if I hear what you're saying right, then there are two types of aging populations here: the ones that can live to 120 and still climb Mount Everest, and the ones that are experiencing other challenges, physical and mental, and we need to consider both of them when we speak about ageism and aging.
Yeah, I mean, basically, I think that it's, you know, as someone else said already, you know, you have to look at, I guess it was Christine said, each individual has to be seen as an individual. And, but there are factors that need additional attention as someone gets older, because it would be foolish. Just like when I go to the doctor, I had a heart attack when I was 40, it would be foolish for my doctor not to look at me a little differently than someone who's never had heart disease.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you.
I was thinking of changing that voice in your head, Lyle. The group that's done the most for me is the Rabbi Zalman's Aging to Saging image of our doing, I don't know if I want to call it spiritual work, but our doing inner work that challenges the ageism that we carry, to look at the things that have been added to our lives. I'm most aware of those people who have gone through the hardships and who have survived, as to what they may have to offer to intergenerational. So there is a woman in this country who runs a podcast called Everything Happens by Kate Bowler that I highly recommend, because she brings on the people who have gone through things, and they share their stories. And I'll stop there, but that's, I think Saging International is a wonderful group, and it is international. So take a look.
Thank you, Brian. I want to come back just to the question we asked, is like, in what circumstances age should be considered in setting policies for older people, for people of any age, and refer back to the couple of examples that Bridget brought us about renting a car or mandatory retirement of 68 or getting on the list of organ donors. So are there any, from your knowledge, are there any other situations that you see that age should be considered relevant when deciding on policies? And Valerie?
Yes. It's mandatory now on British trains and most buses that older people have priority seating. And that is a tremendous advantage. When I went up to Glasgow and the train was absolutely jam-packed, I said to one young man, may I have your seat? And he said, why? I said, I'm an old lady and you're a strong young man and you're sitting in a priority seat. He was so cross and I was thrilled. So there are situations where we can play the granny card and get away with it.
Nice. Sheila.
Hi there. I just wanted to raise the point that in Minnesota right now, there is a task force on aging at the state level. And all this year and all next year, they're having hearings every month. And your question was, in what areas should age be considered in policymaking? So this is at the state legislature. And every month they're bringing in experts to talk about food security, transportation, because there are rural areas where there aren't taxis or Ubers available. They're talking about medical, they're talking about nursing homes, and this task force was appointed, and in January of 2025, they have to come back with firm recommendations, and then legislation would be introduced, so bills and laws would be introduced. And so, of course, the interest is very high. This is not federal, so this is not Social Security and Medicare related. This is for the state of Minnesota. This is with the politicians and the legislators. This is testimony from the general public. For instance, retirees groups, some are union related, some are not, are speaking up. And so that effort is underway right now. And the question was, what other areas not at work? So the areas that are coming up are transportation to get people to their appointments, food security, such as Meals on Wheels, it's called, to get funding for that. These different areas are being addressed. And those meetings are recorded. You could go online and watch the hearings and see what's being discussed. And these are tangible areas and a firm deadline of January 2025.
Yeah, wonderful. For everybody who thought that activism and advocacy are no longer work, there you are. Rebecca, you're next.
Yes, mine is very, very short. To your question, I'm thinking that we are all saying there is nothing wrong in recognizing age when we develop laws or legislations. It is only wrong if we use age to discriminate against other people. So there are some age-related needs. For example, at my age, I may not, for example, in education, I may not need the same services as someone who is 12 years or 20 years. So for me, there's absolutely nothing wrong in recognizing age per se when we develop services, but there's something wrong in using age to discriminate when we do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. And you got Bruce's clapping of support. And Doug.
Well, for me, the other way to think about it is to not talking about old age, but talking about young age. I mean, if we're going to restrict people because of age, I would think maybe there should be people under 25 shouldn't vote, for example, because we know that their minds aren't fully developed yet. They should not be able to drive either, because really where the most accidents are in that 18 to 25 area, where they're driving very fast. They have no, their reflexes might be fast, but they just don't have any common sense. That's where the high incidence of accidents are. They probably, in the United States, we know the Second Amendment allows you to carry a gun. Absolutely, we have terrible time here with these mass shootings, and they're mostly much younger folks. If we're going to discriminate on age, let's look at these younger folks and put some restrictions on them. You don't see really if, for accidents with cars, there might be there are some that as you age, but they're not speeding on the highway at 90 or 100 miles an hour and killing other people. They might be driving into a garage or a tree. So it's very, very different. So, if you're going to look at it one side, you need to look at it the other as well. I know it's a bit tongue in cheek, but it's a way to remind people that even loneliness, loneliness, I've seen some statistics in that it's not just the older folks. As a matter of fact, they're not the highest percentage. It's younger folks, teenagers, because of the social media, feel very much alone as well. A lot of loneliness there. So you have to be careful what you correlate and how you use statistics to justify age discrimination.
Wise words. Thank you, Doug. That's definitely a perspective we have not brought up here very much yet. And I'd like to go back to Bridget. Bridget, you've been listening to the voices here and maybe taking lots of notes and things like that. How would you bookend this conversation?
I think it's been fascinating. It's really interesting. And I love the way Rebecca summed it up. Thank you, Rebecca, when you said that there's nothing wrong with considering aging in policymaking, of course, but what is wrong is when age or chronological age is used to discriminate against people. And I think that really, to me, is at the heart of it. The way, should we have upper age limits to healthcare? Should we prevent people getting travel insurance, or should we make travel insurance so expensive over a certain age that it's unavailable? Should we stop people accessing loans for education because they are a certain age? I think in all of these areas, to me, that if they're underpinned by ageist assumptions that older people don't learn as quickly or can't learn new things or are not going to be able to put their training to use because they're not going to live long enough, therefore we shouldn't give them a loan. To me, this is absolutely unacceptable. And so it's if we deny people access to renting cars because we assume they're going to be bad drivers when we get older, we can't drive as well. These ageist assumptions must be challenged, which is different from considering issues around, sort of health and aging, or issues around income and economic security and aging in policymaking. So one question I did have, I know we wrap up, we should soon, was whether you think that age discrimination, so denying people their rights on the basis of their age, Does that play out or look different in different places around the world? Or do you think that basically it's quite similar wherever you live, that age discrimination where you're prevented from doing things because of your older age? I'd be interested to hear any views on that if we have time, just in the last minute or so.
Yeah, we have a couple minutes. So maybe from Europe or Africa or India. Anybody who would like to share?
Is Bridget's question, could you just restate the question, because I'm not quite sure I'm clear on it.
Does age discrimination look different or the same around the world?
Yes, I just came back from the international conference in Scotland, and we're resident-based community, retirement community. And we had wonderful conversations about that because people around the world wanted to incorporate that in their communities. And here I was very moved by the comment about people going into older communities and they're less active, they're growing older faster, and quite frankly, they die. And here we have people in their 90s and 100s, you know, living with purpose and meaning and lifelong learning. And there are expectations of their involvement and problem solving. I think expectations are so critical. And so they live with dignity and purpose, and they're very active and very healthy. And I think if we can keep that model in front of people, we're going to have people aging. So much of it is what we do and how we treat people, and how that influences their health, their mental, emotional, and physical health.
Thank you, Verna. Maura?
Mute myself. Thank you. I would really like to just share what I learned when I attended a course earlier this year with Dr. Bill Thomas. He had such an interesting approach to this whole issue. He said we should stop trying to fight ageism per se, and we should promote aging literacy. And his other major point was the fact that from the time we're born and we get that first slap on our backs and we take our first gasp of breath, we have two imperatives, and they are growth and development. And they remain the same throughout our life until we breathe our last breath. It's just that they are different. And I think we need to educate the world about our stage of life, which is totally different. But we certainly do have growth and developmental issues. And I think it was Brian who mentioned that in the book of and I can never say his name, Salman Shakti, right? And that's all I wanted to say for the moment.
It's wonderful. Thank you, Maura. I want to take a brief moment to make a public announcement. We're going to close in a couple of minutes formally, and we're going to stay for another 15 minutes for all the rest of the conversation that we want to have. I wanted to invite you to our December session, which is going to happen on the 11th of December, same time, same place. And the general topic that we have right now is how artificial intelligence shapes the future of aging. So going beyond ChatGPT. And you're going to see an invitation in your mail in a couple of weeks. The other thing that I wanted to encourage you is to, I put a link in the chat for a feedback link. We're interested in hearing from you. How was your experience in this session? Are there any other things that you'd like to share with us? So there's a link there. And as you know, sometime toward the end of this week, you're going to get a follow-up highlights of today's session and a link to this recording on our YouTube channel, where you can find previous sessions that are also very, very interesting. And I also now would like to formally thank Bridget for triggering such an interesting conversation about age discrimination. We haven't even scratched the surface. So we have 3 more minutes. I'm going to give them to Bridget to say a few bookending words.
Well, I would just like to say thank you. I've been taking copious notes, and it's been fascinating to hear your different experiences. And I think that this is the only way that we can. I mean, for me and my job as a researcher, this is the only way that I can really understand and learn is by hearing from people's experience. And I think your network is amazing in the way that you have these regular discussions, and it's an opportunity for people to share their experience. So I just wanted to say thank you very much. Please do stay in touch. Osnet has my email address, so please, if there were things that you wanted to raise but you didn't have time or weren't able to, please do feel free to contact me. I'd love to hear from you. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Bridget. I'll include the email address in the follow-up note that you will all receive. And now we're going to close formally and continue to talk. So we'll be here until half an hour after the hour, and anybody who wants to say anything about today's topic or about anything else that has to do with classical network or aging, please go on. And if you need to leave, that's good too. Thank you for coming.
Good to see everyone. One quick thing. I just came back from Mexico a couple of weeks ago, and in Mexico City, where Leslie and I rode the subways, which I have to say most affluent Mexicans don't do. It was mind-boggling to see how few peak grayheads like me there were on the trains. I would count, and invariably would only see 1 or 2 older people, and part of that is because you have to descend or come up out of subways that are very deep underground, and the escalators don't always work there. That I suspect is a part of it. I don't know what the other explanations were, but it was astonishing to me how few grayheads I saw walking around among hundreds of thousands of people I probably encountered over my time in Mexico. I couldn't get over that. We live in a culture where in Massachusetts we see lots of grayheads and don't feel very out of place, but it was really unbelievable to me. I just hadn't had that experience before.
Thank you. I just wanted to say this was an extremely interesting conversation for me. This is the first time I've attended your group. And one of the things that I think was not belabored particularly during the conversation, but I think is important, is that as an older generation, we are our own worst enemies. I'm generalizing, but we have grown up with an expectation that when we get old, certain things are not for us. And that attitude has to change, starting with our grandchildren. Because they look at us, even my own daughter will say, "Don't do that to Nana, she's too old." And I look at her and I say, "I'm not too old. And you shouldn't be telling your children that I'm too old. Because when they grow old, they're going to think, oh, I'm now Nana's age, so I can't do that because she couldn't do that." This change in attitude has to start at a much younger age.
Absolutely. Aging literacy from the beginning.
From the crib. Yeah.
Exactly.
Aging literacy is a great phrase. I'm going to copy that, if I may. Thank you.
No, absolutely. It's Dr. Bill Thomas, and I think it's brilliant, and I think it's easier than saying you're fighting against ageism. Let's fight for the education of people. from the youngest age.
Yeah.
Bridget?
Can I agree with that?
Yes, indeed, Rebecca.
I don't want to take up time, but I wondered to what extent it's to do with role models as well, because I think even now, I mean, I get really inspired when I see older role models, and that makes me think, oh yeah, I could be doing that. I should be doing that. I'm sort of in my mid-50s, and so I wonder if for that younger generation, you know, as we had for women and seeing women in the workplace and women taking on, you know, senior positions, we need these role models to show us the way a bit, I think, as well, perhaps.
Absolutely.
And we can see a lot of this in Sheila's Legacy Festival. Sheila.
We are the role models. How we think and act and do is how younger people will see how older people do things, and can gain their respect and admiration and empathy and wanting to be like us if we present ourselves as we really are, authentically and old, and yet still vibrant in various ways. I think the biggest problem I'm seeing in the States, everyone is terribly concerned about Alzheimer's disease. That pops up all the time. And that's a separate issue that I think we should talk about sometime. But this was wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila. Verna, and then I would like to also ask people from Europe, like from the Netherlands, or who else is here from Europe? Dana,
Virginia from the Baltic states.
Yeah, so Verna and then Dana, and then on we go.
I'll be quick. I don't want to dominate. Just one quick example of, I'm sorry, about role models. I got a costume once for Midsummer's Night. It was silly. It was wonderful. It had a wand and too and everything. And I went up to the saleswoman and she says to me, your little granddaughter is going to love that. And I paused and I said, yes, I will. And she paused, and first she laughed, and then she got very serious. And she said, I'm afraid to age. She said, I have no role models like you. She said, I don't think of it as fun. And I thought, oh my gosh, what have we done to people? And so I work with the young a lot. Sometimes I just sit on buses and talk to them, and they're amazed. They're amazed at what a wonderful, fun life I have. And we do have that responsibility. So thank you. Oh, and one other thing, I just came out of a research conference on researchers on Alzheimer's, and many of you already know this, but if you have rheumatoid arthritis, you cannot get Alzheimer's. You can't. It's a research fact. Well, thank you. Thank you.
Very encouraging. Dana? Dana, you're on mute.
You're muted.
Sheila, I wanted to thank you because you expressed it so precisely what I was, my feelings. And I wanted to tell you that I have thousands of elderly students in my Center of Lifelong Learning. And what I consider very, very important is that these people have always something to look forward, in their age. They have some expectations, still some expectations. And I am organizing celebrations of birthdays of my students who are 90 plus. And then the media are coming, and they are, I invite them and I say they are the prototypes of successful aging. Come to talk to them to give us the instructions how we should live. And it is absolutely amazing because these students, they are still going to the trips to Egypt and riding the camels. Can you imagine, in age of 92? Just last week they came back. And they are having so many subjects that they are studying, and they are doing physical training and going for memory training. So I think that it is that lifestyle that keeps us going. So thank you, Sheila.
Great.
How do you see it,
Can I
Valerie?
jump in quickly to Dana in case she's going? Dana, please post what you're doing on Learn with Grandma International. I know we don't have a group for Czech Republic, but all countries can look at the international group. So show them what we're doing. Show them what you're doing.
Yeah.
The more people see
Valerie
it.
Valerie put the link in the chat, so we're going to share with you the chat's transcript. You can find
No,
it
I was
there.
meaning for the thing that Dana's doing in Czech Republic.
Yes.
Yeah, that would be
Absolutely.
lovely.
Okay,
One other thing I'd like to say before I go. Getting old is actually a brilliant idea. If you don't get old, you're dead, and you can't achieve an awful lot on this planet, in this life, if you are not on it. So enjoy being old. I go dancing. I was dancing yesterday in the pub with my little dog, and well, the dog didn't dance, but but she came with me. She's beside me now. But we have this little life. It's 82 seems ancient because my parents died very young, and my children are now becoming elderly people. My son is going to be 65. That's maybe he's 64. It doesn't really matter. But the point is, we have this little life. Go with it. Enjoy it. I'm thinking of going back to Uganda again after Christmas because I achieved so much there, and it would be a shame not to go back again. But the question, the comments made about travel insurance has made me worried because my son has said, at your age, mother, you should not travel without travel insurance.
Yeah, I think one shouldn't travel without insurance at any age. Thanks, Val. I was wondering if Virgilia wouldn't like to say something for us from the Baltic countries. Come on. Just unmute
Thank you very much. I don't wrote my country, so there is Lithuanian Europe organization, and me personally. We all thought about only public life, discrimination in the public life, but not about the discrimination in the family life. It usually took place because our grandchildren and others don't want to to teach us, for example, computer skills to have a better and other things. And discrimination in family is very important thing for all the elderly people. 2 years ago, I have read a research of United States researchers about that elderly people do not want to ask their grandchildren for teaching new things because they do not want to be not informed. No, how to say, sorry for my bad English, but they don't like to do that. Is it true in your life or not? No?
Well, not for Valerie, but it sounds like you can't legislate family. this is probably one area that the policy cannot touch right now. What's happening in the Netherlands, Han? Sorry.
My age is my unique selling point. I use it daily. I am making technology in order to let elderly live longer at home and support voluntary carers. And I find out that people believe me when I tell things. And so there is a very positive way. And so it is positive discrimination, definitely.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. And you know, time flies, and we're just about at the end of another wonderful call with Paciton Network, 50-50 series of conversation.
Osnet, can we just see if India would like to say hello to us? Balkrishna Thapa Magar, are you there?
Maybe not.
Maybe not. Okay.
Maybe not. But we're very happy that he's here because it's awfully late in India right now.
Yeah, exactly. And we didn't hear from Alexa from Toronto. She's been sitting there smiling.
Well, I've been, I don't have gray hair. I have a little, but I'm mostly here to learn because I'm a professor who teaches about gerontology. We're learning to work with, and alongside older adults in our community. And so, as I'm listening to this, the concepts that keep popping to my head have to do with the role of work and the perceptions of older adults as contributing to work. And even as we introduce ourselves, it's often situated in the work that we do, right? Whether it's paid or not, right? Like it's often volunteer work after a certain point. So it's, and that's something societal, right? About valuing people on the basis of the work that they do, what they produce, and what they contribute, what were they perceived to contribute. Because we don't value certain types of contributions as much as others. Anyway, that's just what I've been thinking about as you all have been talking, is like what our ability to contribute to the larger society, or what we're perceived to be able to contribute, how that affects people's perceptions of us, and also the assumptions we make when we meet people for the first time, and based upon their appearance, and like what that white hair says to people. And I mean, like for my mother, she stalwart non-dyeing of her hair when I was growing up in the 1980s and 90s. Did not dye her hair. She went gray early. Then I think after a certain point in her career, when she shifted gears and like went to a new location, she started dyeing her hair, which is fine. I mean, whatever. You do you, right? But then the pandemic happens and she can't get to her dresser, right? And so now she's beautifully, completely white. And it's for her, it's been a noted transition, right? About she's very aware of how people acknowledge her differently because of that piece of her appearance. And, and I'm going to be observing that for myself as it happens. But anyway, like thinking about the role of just the assumptions people automatically make when they meet you on the basis of the fact that you might appear to be a certain way. Anyway, I think that's all tied into ageism. But again, I'm fortunate so far, as a 40, how old am I? 44. I'm 44 as a 44-year-old. I'm kind of in that middle space where I'm probably committing ageist acts more often than being on the receiving end.
Well, you just did.
Alexa,
aim to yourself,
Yes.
Whether you want it or not, because that's how our language works. This is the world we live in, and we can, when we develop awareness, we can probably make some changes and create a better world. Maybe not for ourselves, but for the people who will be our age sometime. I'm conscious about time. It's already 2 minutes past the hour, so, and I'm looking also at the battery of my laptop. So I'd like to informally close the conversation now. We probably could continue for a lot longer, but let's pause here until the 11th of December next month.
Okay, and I'll just add to that, if I may, and just say, Alexa, our Pass It On Network's co-founder, who's sitting right here with us, Jan Hively, her mantra is meaningful work, paid or unpaid, through the last breath. And that's influenced a lot of our Pass It On Network's growth. Right, we can now close. Jan?
I just want to comment there, though, that it's so important to understand that what the meaning of work is. It's simply productivity that benefits you or your family or your community or whoever. And I think that here in the US, we tend to overdo what it means as a job, a paid job, paid employment. Not true. Paid or unpaid, through the last breath. Right.
Thanks, Jen.